You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I wasn't supposed to be back in Savannah until Sunday. But on Friday night, somewhere along I-16, a strange urge hit me. Maybe it was just homesickness. Or maybe it was something deeper, something I couldn't name. I didn't text Tess. Didn't call ahead. I figured surprising her would be a nice change from the script we'd been following lately. Things had felt strained, though I kept telling myself it was just the distance, the long hours, the pressure of everything. I parked my truck in front of the house just past 10 p.m. The porch light was off. The driveway was empty. No laughter spilling from the windows, no music from Libby's playlist echoing down the street. Just stillness. I got out, left my bags in the truck, and walked around back like I always did. The key slid into the door without hesitation. I pushed it open, expecting at least the soft hum of the dishwasher or the clatter of toys in the living room. But the house met me with silence. That kind of silence that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The kitchen was clean. Too clean. No dishes in the sink, no cereal box left out by Jake, no smell of dinner wafting from the stove. I frowned. Then I caught it, something subtle in the air. A cologne I didn't recognize. Not my usual cedar and sage. Something lighter. More floral. I moved through the hallway, quiet, careful, like I was walking into someone else's life. Upstairs, a voice whispered. A woman's voice, hers. Followed by the click of a wine glass setting down. I paused at the base of the stairs, unsure whether to announce myself or keep going. My heart was already hammering. I crept up, each step a question I wasn't ready to answer. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I could see her through the gap. Tess, standing near the window in a pale silk robe. She had a wine glass in one hand and her phone pressed against her ear with the other. Her hair was freshly curled, makeup still perfect, her posture too polished for a regular night in. She didn't look surprised. She looked ready. Just not for me. Her robe fell just above the knees, tied neatly, not a wrinkle in sight. On the accent chair by the closet, something caught my eye, a crisp, light blue men's dress shirt folded over the arm. It wasn't mine. The scent of that unfamiliar cologne was stronger here. I pushed the door open. Slowly. Silently. My shadow fell across the hardwood before I stepped into the room. She turned. For a second, just a second, her eyes widened. Then something flicked off in her expression. She put the wine glass down, lowered her phone, and tilted her chin with a practiced calm. "Clayton," she said, like she was annoyed, like I was the one who needed to explain myself. "You're early." I nodded once, not moving from the threshold. "Yeah. Thought I'd surprise you." She looked at me for a beat, then turned toward the closet and said, "You should have called." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "So you could hide that shirt?" She froze. Just for a second. Then scoffed. "Really? You come home early and start making accusations?" I stepped inside slowly. The wine glass still had condensation. The bed was neatly made, too neatly, the way hotel maids tuck corners. "I'm asking," I said. "You want to tell me who that belongs to?" She turned fully to me now, crossing her arms. "I don't know. Maybe it's yours and you just forgot." "It's not my size," I said. "Not even close." She glanced away, then grabbed the wine glass again and sipped as if she needed a second to reset. "You always do this," she muttered. "Blow things out of proportion. Maybe if you trusted me." "Don't do that," I said. "Don't turn this around." "I'm not turning anything," she snapped. "I'm standing here in my house and my husband barges in 2 days early without saying a word. I live here too." "Do you?" she asked, and something about her tone chilled me. She walked past me then, brushing my shoulder. I caught another whiff of that cologne. "Where are the kids?" I asked. She paused at the door. "They're with my sister for the weekend." "And you didn't tell me?" "You didn't tell me you were coming home early." "Tess," I said slowly, "just tell me what's going on." She didn't turn around. The bedroom was too clean. The lighting too warm. The wine too chilled. And her face too calm. All of it rehearsed. I looked at the closet door. It was open, just a crack. The scent was stronger there. I didn't move. She said, still facing the hallway, "You've been distant for months, Clay. Always on the road, always busy. So this is my fault?" "I didn't say that." "But you meant it." She didn't reply. I stepped toward the closet, pulled it open. Empty hangers. A duffel bag on the floor that wasn't ours. My stomach dropped. I didn't need more answers. I already knew. "Tess," I said, my voice hoarse. "Who is he?" She turned then, slowly, her eyes tired. "You don't want to know." I stared at her for what felt like a lifetime. Then I walked out. Not a word exchanged as I passed her in the hallway. Not a word as I went down the stairs, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the cool night air. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I just left it behind because whatever was waiting for me up there wasn't the woman I married. It was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. And I needed to breathe. I didn't sleep that night. After driving for over an hour with no destination in mind, I ended up parked at an old gas station just outside of town. I sat there in the dark, hands on the wheel, the engine off, but the questions in my mind revving like an engine with no brakes. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Was it just that night, or had my life been unraveling behind my back for months? The silence in the cab was suffocating, and all I could hear was the echo of Tess's voice, tight, rehearsed, defensive. Her expression wasn't one of surprise or guilt. It was annoyance, as if I was the one who had messed up by showing up too soon. By sunrise, I was back at the house, but I didn't go inside. I waited. I watched from across the street in my truck. I wanted to see if he'd leave. If someone would slip out the back door like a character in a bad TV drama. But no one came out. The house stayed still. Eventually, Tess drove off alone. Only then did I go in. I needed to see it again to confirm I hadn't imagined it. The shirt was gone. So was the cologne. The closet door was closed. Her robe was folded on the edge of the bed, the wine glass in the dishwasher. Like nothing had happened. But I noticed something else. The family laptop wasn't on the desk where it usually sat. Her phone was missing from the kitchen counter. The shared calendar where we'd always kept trips, Jake's soccer games, Libby's tutoring, was wiped clean. None of this was accidental. Over the next few days, I started putting the pieces together. I didn't tell her I knew. I didn't mention the missing shirt or the phantom cologne. I played dumb. If Tess was hiding something, I needed her to keep thinking she was getting away with it. That's when I started noticing all the things I hadn't paid attention to before. Her wardrobe had changed. New clothes, expensive stuff from boutiques I knew she didn't use to shop at. Heels she never wore around me. Jewelry that sparkled like gilt. There were the trips too. Quick weekends to see her sister or visit an old college friend in Atlanta. Always alone. Always last minute. She never asked if I wanted to come along. Never offered to video call with the kids while she was gone. Just vague itineraries and distant smiles. Then there were the bank statements. That's what really kicked it into high gear. Tess had access to the kids' education trust. We'd agreed it would only be touched for tuition or emergencies. But there were withdrawals, small at first, then larger. Hundreds here, 1,000 there. Transferred out to a personal savings account she never mentioned. The name on that account? Hers. Only hers. I checked the statement again. One transaction stood out, Salon Avanti, $320. I remembered that place. She used to joke it was too overpriced for our budget. Suddenly, she was there every other week. Hair appointments, spa treatments, mani-pedis. And every visit lined up perfectly with one of her solo weekends. The phone was next. I started paying attention to how she guarded it. It was never left on the counter anymore. Always on silent. Face down. Even the kids noticed. Libby asked why Mom never let her play games on it anymore. Too many work things, Tess had said. Jake, our 10-year-old, asked the harder question one night at dinner when Tess was out. Dad, he said, who's the special guest? What do you mean? He tilted his head. Mom says I'm not supposed to talk about it, but there's a man who comes over sometimes when you're gone. I froze. Did she tell you his name? Jake shook his head. But he wears a suit. And Mom makes me go to Libby's room to watch movies. I couldn't breathe. Later that night, I checked the family laptop. But the password had been changed. I tried everything, birthdays, anniversaries, pet names. Nothing worked. So I used my work laptop. Backed up all our shared accounts. Dug through emails, phone logs, receipts. Created a folder named Contingency. Every time I found something suspicious, I saved it there. Her browser history was practically wiped clean. She had logged out of all shared platforms, even our Dropbox account. But a few cookies remained: travel booking sites, real estate listings in a gated community 2 hours away, and a website that helped set up offshore banking accounts. That's when I knew. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave. Not just me, but everything. The house, the town, maybe even the country. And she was doing it with precision. She'd even changed the beneficiaries on one of our smaller life insurance policies. Her name was now listed alongside someone I didn't recognize. At least, not yet. I wrote the name down. Royce Langford. It rang a bell. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat in the dark and replayed every interaction from the last 6 months. Every brush off, every fake smile, every time she said she was just tired. I thought about the way she used to look at me when we were younger. Like I was home. Now, she barely looked at me at all. And when she did, it was like I was in the way. I was already gone in her mind. Replaced. But not by accident. She was methodical. She had been building this exit for a while, laying the groundwork, while I was busy keeping the lights on and the kids fed. What started as gut instinct had now turned into a mountain of signs. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was proof. And I wasn't going to sit quietly and let it happen. The thing about suspicion is, once it digs in, it doesn't let go. It starts coloring everything, every word, every glance, every silence. But now I didn't need to guess. I had enough signs to fill a courtroom. What I needed now was confirmation, something undeniable. So I bought a camera. Not a cheap plastic one from a convenience store. This was professional grade. Small, discreet, motion activated. It synced to my phone. I installed it above the garage, camouflaged under the eaves with a clear line of sight to the driveway and the side door, the one Tess used when she didn't want to be seen from the street. I told her I was working extra hours that week, had some overnight inspections upstate. She nodded like it didn't matter, barely looked up from her phone. That stung more than it should have. For 3 days I stayed at a motel outside the city. Just far enough not to raise her suspicions. Each night, I watched. At first, nothing. Then, on the 4th night, movement. 10:42 p.m. Tessa's car pulled into the driveway. She got out, glanced over her shoulder, and unlocked the side door. A few minutes later, another car arrived. A silver Audi I didn't recognize. Out stepped a man, tall, thin, in a light button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. He walked up like he'd done it 100 times. She met him at the door with a smile. Not just any smile, the kind I hadn't seen on her face in years. The kind that once belonged to me. Then she kissed him. Not a friendly hello. Not a cheek brush. A real kiss. I paused the feed. Zoomed in. Even grainy, I could make out the profile. Royce Langford. It hit me like a hammer to the chest. Royce was our family's attorney. Handled the trust. Helped us draft wills. Celebrated Libby's 8th birthday in our backyard 2 years ago. He knew everything about us, finances, assets, even emergency contacts. I sat back in the motel chair, stunned. She wasn't just cheating. She was sleeping with the one man who could legally erase me from my own life. I watched the rest of the footage in numb silence. They stayed in the house for hours. At 12:37 a.m., the bedroom light flicked off. I didn't need to see more. The next morning, I pulled every financial document I could find. I cross-checked every transfer, every routing number. It didn't take long to find them. 2 wire transfers from our joint account to a business entity I didn't recognize, Halcyon Equity Management. Registered in Panama. Royce's name appeared on both transfers as an authorized party. The account had been set up using forged documentation, my signature on a notarized approval form, a signature I had never written. I contacted a buddy from my time in the Army, Micah. Now a digital forensics analyst. He owed me a favor. I told him everything. Showed him the footage, the transfers, the signatures. He didn't hesitate. Give me 3 days, he said. I'll get you everything. While Micah worked, I went back to the camera. 2 more nights. 2 more visits. Each one more casual than the last. Royce didn't sneak. He strolled. Like he belonged there. Like he'd already moved in. He even parked in my spot the second night. I started to document everything. Footage. Screensh *TS. Bank statements. Emails. I printed them, filed them in a binder labeled Contingency Plan B. I hid it in the lockbox under the floorboards in the garage, someplace she'd never look. On the 3rd night, I got the call from Micah. Clayton, he said, they're not just having an affair. They're running a scheme. He sent me an encrypted folder. Inside were audio recordings, calls Tess made from her work line. She spoke in code, but it was obvious what she meant. Did he sign it yet? She whispered in one. No. But he will. He trusts me. He thinks I'm using the money for Libby's tuition. Another clip played Royce's voice. Once it clears, we can disappear. New names, clean slate. Then the sound of them laughing. I didn't feel rage. I felt cold. Dead inside. Micah had also traced Halcyon Equity to 3 other shell corporations. Each had small accounts, $10K, $20,000, $40,000, incremental moves to avoid detection. They weren't just leaving me. They were stealing everything. I had to move fast. I sent the binder to a lawyer friend in North Carolina, Mark Ellison. We'd gone to school together. He specialized in asset protection and estate law. Trusted, sharp, and most importantly, far from Royce's circle. Mark called me the next day. Clay, this is serious. If we act now, we can freeze the accounts before they clear the next transfer. But we need to file immediately. I gave him the go-ahead. Meanwhile, at home, Tess acted like nothing was wrong. She smiled. Kissed the kids. Packed lunches. Wore the same perfume she wore on our honeymoon. It was chilling. Jake barely spoke to me. Libby was distant. Not angry, just gone. I knew Tess had been poisoning the well, turning them against me one small whisper at a time. That night, I sat with Jake before bed. "Hey buddy," I said gently. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Has Mom said anything about me lately?" He frowned. "She said you might go away for a while." "For work." I forced a smile. "Would that make you sad?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Mom says you don't really like it here." I couldn't breathe. They were planning to leave and make it my fault. I kissed Jake goodnight and stepped outside. The porch light buzzed above me. I stared out into the yard, wondering how long this had been in motion. The next morning, I found Tess in the kitchen. She was scrolling through her phone, laughing at something. I asked, "Do you still love me?" She looked up, startled. "Of course." I nodded, then quietly removed my wedding ring and placed it on the windowsill. She didn't ask why. She didn't say a word. I walked out. After I placed my wedding ring on the windowsill, I didn't go back upstairs. I didn't check on the kids, didn't say another word to Tess. I just left. I drove straight to the motel I'd used before, room 208, quiet, end of the hall, with a clear view of the back parking lot. I paid in cash and told the clerk I wouldn't need housekeeping. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, and tried to feel something. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I made a plan. Mark called that afternoon. "We got the injunction," he said. The judge signed off. Emergency freeze on all joint accounts, the trust, and any property co-listed with Royce's name. We also got an order to initiate a forensic audit. "Good," I said. "What about custody?" "That's next." "But Clay, we need something solid. If they're siphoning assets, we need to show intent. Not just emails and speculation. We need legal documents, signatures, routing forms, anything connecting Tess to Royce beyond the affair." I already had a lead. That night, I returned to the house while Tess was out. She said she was taking Libby to a school recital. I knew better. Libby wasn't performing and Jake was left home with a sitter. Another lie. I used the garage key. The house was quiet. Upstairs, I slipped into the home office, the room we once used to plan family vacations and college savings. Tess's desk drawer was locked. I pried it open with a flathead screwdriver. Inside, I found what I needed. Signed documents. Notarized. My name on transfer forms I'd never seen before. Loan agreements listing our home as collateral, co-signed by Royce. One form even bore my forged signature authorizing the liquidation of a retirement account we'd agreed never to touch. I snapped photos of everything, scanned them to a secure drive and emailed copies to Mark. Then I dug deeper. I checked the closet safe, the one we hadn't used in years. It was empty except for a flash drive. It wasn't labeled, but when I plugged it into my laptop, I found audio files. Dozens of them. Recordings of phone calls. Voice memos. Some were benign, grocery lists, reminders. But others. "Make sure he doesn't see the next transfer," Royce's voice said. "Tell him it's for school fees." Tess replied, "He won't ask. He's too busy playing martyr." Another file, Tess speaking into her phone, almost like a diary. "He doesn't see me anymore. Just the kids. Just work. Royce makes me feel like I exist again." I closed the laptop, stomach churning. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. They weren't running away in the night. They were building a new life brick by brick using my name, my money, my family. And they were almost done. I left the house before Tess got back. I didn't want to give her a reason to suspect anything had changed. I wanted her to keep lying. Keep thinking she was in control. From the motel, I called Micah. "I need you to trace Royce," I said. "Everything properties, business interests, travel, phone records if you can get them." Micah didn't ask questions. "Give me a day." While I waited, I took the next step. I filed for temporary custody, emergency guardianship based on suspected financial abuse, intent to flee jurisdiction, and manipulation of the minors involved. It was a long sh*T, but I had the documentation. The emails. The bank trails. The video. Mark submitted everything to the North Carolina court where our family trust was registered out of state, out of Royce's influence. Within 36 hours, we had a court order. All accounts frozen. Royce barred from contact with trust assets. Tessa's access to shared funds suspended. And most importantly, I was granted temporary legal custody of both children until further review. Tess hadn't even seen it coming. The court papers were served to her on a Friday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but Micah was. He said she looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. She tried to call me 3 times. I didn't answer. That same day, Royce and Tess tried to leave. They'd booked flights out of Miami one way under different names. Claimed it was for a legal conference in Colombia. The reservation was made through a shell travel agency. Micah found the link buried behind layers of dummy accounts. They left Savannah in Royce's car just after lunch. What they didn't know was that the FBI had already been tipped off. Mark sent them the suspicious documents tied to international transfers, forged signatures, and intent to transport children out of state without consent. At the city limits, they were stopped. Federal agents searched the vehicle. Underneath the floor mat, 2 sets of passports. Fake identities. Cash and rubber bands. A folder containing fake property deeds and a signed affidavit listing Royce as the primary guardian of Jake and Libby. They were detained on the spot. I got the call while sitting in a quiet corner of a coffee shop watching raindrops race down the window. They're in custody, Mark said. Held pending fraud investigation. No bail yet. I didn't feel vindicated. Just tired. The next morning, I sat down with Libby and Jake. They were quiet. Confused. I didn't want to hurt them. But they needed to know the truth. I played them the security footage. Tess and Royce on the porch. The kiss. The door closing behind them. Libby burst into tears. Jake turned away, fists clenched. I didn't want to tell you, he said. She told me I'd ruin it. You didn't ruin anything, I said, hugging him tightly. This isn't your fault. None of it is. For the first time in weeks, I saw him cry. Not just scared tears, but grief. Confusion. The tears of a boy who had been caught in something far too big for him. I held him until he fell asleep on the couch, then turned to Libby. Dad, she whispered, what's going to happen to Mom? I didn't lie. She made choices, I said. Now there are consequences. Libby nodded, eyes red, and leaned her head on my shoulder. I just want things to be normal again. We're going to try, I told her. Together. By the end of that week, the media had caught wind of the arrest. A quiet local bleb at first, Savannah couple detained in financial fraud investigation buried beneath weather reports and city council drama. But then a national outlet picked it up. The combination of stolen assets, forged documents, and child custody made it irresistible. Suddenly, my family's breakdown was public. I told the kids to stay off social media. Libby obeyed. Jake asked why people were calling his mom a thief. I didn't sugarcoat it. She made some very bad decisions, I said. But that doesn't mean she didn't love you. He looked down. She told me we were going to be a team. Just us and Royce. The pit in my stomach returned. In the days that followed, Mark and I built a legal fortress. We submitted detailed financial forensics to the North Carolina court, proving that Tess and Royce had laundered over $185,000 through 3 Panamanian shell corporations, all tied back to our trust. Each company had a single signature, Tess's. Co-signed in some cases by Royce, in others by forged documents under my name. Mark didn't just want to win the custody case. He wanted to bury them legally. We filed for full guardianship, citing attempted custodial interference, fraud, identity forgery, and interstate endangerment. Attached were affidavits from financial analysts, child psychologists, and even one of Tess's former co-workers who admitted under oath that Tess had been actively planning an exit from the marriage for over a year. In parallel, the Department of Justice launched a criminal case. Royce's law firm disavowed him immediately, suspended his license, launched their own internal investigation. He was removed from every case file within 48 hours. Tess, meanwhile, was offered a deal, turn over all account access and cooperate with the federal inquiry in exchange for a reduced sentence. She refused. Said she didn't trust the system. Ironic. When the hearing came, the courtroom was packed. Tess sat across from me, wrists bound. Her once polished appearance now a mess of stress and mascara stains. Royce looked worse. Sickly, pale, defeated. Gone was the arrogance, the smirk. He looked like a man who had lost everything. And he had. The judge read the charges slowly, carefully. Count 1. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Count 2. Use of false identification in federal documentation. Count 3. Attempted international custodial interference. Count 4. Forgery. Count 5. Perjury. The courtroom buzzed. I kept my eyes on the table, my hand resting on Jake's shoulder. Libby squeezed my hand tightly. When called to testify, I stood. My voice didn't shake. I told the truth. About the shifts in Tess's behavior. The withdrawals. The camera. The footage. The emails. I didn't exaggerate, didn't add venom. I wanted the facts to speak louder than my pain. Libby testified too. Initially hesitant, she broke down mid-sentence when the court played a recording of Royce threatening her to keep quiet if she wanted a future. That changed everything. Even Tessa's public defender looked stunned. After the testimony, the judge recessed. We waited. 3 hours later, the decision came. Tessa's parental rights suspended indefinitely. No visitation pending psychological review and federal cooperation. Royce remanded to federal custody. No bail, facing a maximum of 15 years. And I, Clayton Reed, was granted full legal custody of both children. The courtroom let out a gasp. Tess began sobbing uncontrollably, trying to reach out as Libby turned away. Jake didn't look back once. As the gavel struck, it felt final. But there was more. Royce was also charged with obstruction of justice. He tried to delete files after his arrest. He was sentenced to 8 years, with no parole eligibility until year 6. Tess, pressured by mounting evidence and the judge's ruling, finally accepted a deal. 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by probation and mandatory psychological treatment. The court added a condition. Any future contact with the children had to be initiated by them, and only if both children consented in writing. I didn't celebrate. I took the kids home. The first thing I did was rip out the front garden. Tess had loved those azaleas. I replaced them with fresh mulch and lilies, Libby's favorite. Inside, I stripped the house down to the studs, painted every room, bought new furniture, donated anything Tess had touched. Her framed photo above the fireplace? Gone. The embroidered art towels? Burned. I even changed the bedroom layout, flipped the bed, moved the dresser, replaced the mirror. Made it mine. Ours. I left only one thing unchanged. The wedding ring on the windowsill. I placed it in a small glass box along with the photos, the surveillance USB drive, and 1 page from the court transcript. It sat in the corner of the closet. Not as a shrine, but a warning. A reminder that love, when poisoned by lies, leaves behind something worse than anger. It leaves behind silence. We started therapy that week. A family counselor, neutral ground. Libby didn't talk much at first. Just nodded. Listened. Jake drew pictures. After 3 sessions, Libby said, "I'm tired of pretending I'm not mad." That was the start. Our healing wasn't fast. Wasn't pretty. But it was real. One morning, a month later, Libby handed me a note. "Thanks for believing me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Jake started sleeping through the night again. I picked up cooking, messed up a dozen meals before mastering lasagna. Libby started painting. Jake joined the robotics club. We built a new routine. One without whispers, without secrets, without Tess. Tess served her time. 18 months in a low-security facility, most of it in silence. She didn't call, didn't write. When she was released, she filed a petition for visitation rights, something the court had told her not to expect without consent from both children. Libby was 18 by then, a freshman at a medical college halfway across the state. She read the letter and folded it neatly without a word. Jake, now 15, stared at the petition longer, then wrote his response on a single sticky note. "No, thank you." He asked if I thought she'd try again. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But you don't owe her anything." The court denied her petition. Tess appealed. The appeal was rejected. It wasn't about revenge. It was about safety, emotional and otherwise. The judge said Tess had not demonstrated any significant rehabilitation and noted that reintroducing trauma into stable environments is not in the best interest of the minors. Royce didn't appeal anything. He stayed quiet, serving his sentence without protest. From what I'd heard, he kept to himself, avoiding headlines, visitors, and even phone calls. In a strange way, that silence did more to close the chapter than any apology could have. As for me, I kept rebuilding. The house didn't feel like a wound anymore. We'd painted every wall, replaced every floorboard, scrubbed out every echo. The wedding ring stayed in the closet, but now it was more like a monument in a museum, something to remember, not mourn. I finally opened a savings account for the kids, separate from everything else. Libby thanked me when she found out. I didn't think I'd go to college after everything, she said. But you made it happen. Jake picked up a robotics scholarship. I drove him to orientation in Virginia where he walked onto campus like he was finally becoming someone new. And me? I started sleeping again. Eating real meals. Reading books without rereading the same sentence 5 times. Tess tried one last time, shortly before Jake's birthday. She offered to buy back a piece of the house. For the kids, she wrote. So they know I never stop trying. I sent her a one-line response. Your name will never be on anything we build again. Years passed. I stopped marking anniversaries of things ending. I focused on what was beginning. Jake called one night after class. Dad, he said, I think I want to teach one day. Libby came home for spring break and cooked dinner like she used to watch Tess do when she was little. She didn't say it out loud, but I knew what she was doing, reclaiming something that had been taken. One afternoon, I found her in the attic, sorting old boxes. Want me to burn these? She asked, holding a stack of photos with her mother in them. I looked at them, then at her. No, I said. Keep one. Why? Because forgetting isn't healing. Forgiving is. She nodded and slid one photo into her backpack. The rest went into storage. I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. The woman I met wasn't flashy or dramatic. She was steady. She listened. She didn't pry into the past but didn't run from it either. The kids liked her. Jake joked that she made better pancakes than me. Libby said she doesn't feel like a replacement. We didn't talk about marriage. We talked about mornings. About trust. About second chances. And that was enough. Tess stopped writing after her offer to buy the house failed. Last I heard, she moved to New Mexico. She tried to start over. I hope she did. I don't hate her. Not anymore. Hate takes too much out of a person. And I needed everything I had for healing. My life wasn't the same as it was before. It was quieter. Stronger. Braver. And most importantly, it was mine again.